This is the second in a three-part series about looking for your next job role. Whether this is your first job as a newly qualified nurse, or whether you're already working as an RVN and looking for the next step in your career. Please don't forget to like this video if you found it useful, and also subscribe to our YouTube channel, The Langford Academy. So let's first of all talk about the application process. It's a good idea, once you have narrowed down where you want to apply to reach out for more details about a job role. I think not only does this help you to find out if this is the right role for you, but it also shows that initial interest in the job, and it allows you to maybe speak to the hiring manager. So find out who the contact is for that. Find out who that hiring manager is, or if it's through a recruitment agency, speak to them and get some more details about the job role and what the application process is. Ask for a copy of the job description if this hasn't been made available on the job advert. So everyone does things a little bit differently. Sometimes practices will put job descriptions as part of the advert for that job role. Sometimes you might have to ask for it, and sometimes you might not get it until you've actually applied for that job. But that job description will also just help you to get a feel for the job role and whether it's the right thing for you. It will also be really useful for you in the interview, and I think it's really important to have a really good knowledge about that job description, and that will help you out in the interview process. We'll come on to that in a few slides' time. Think about what the steps are for this application. As I said, a lot of places do things a little bit differently. It might be that you are applying online, either on a company website or through a recruitment agency or something like Indeed. But look at what those steps are and make sure that you follow those steps. After all, this is your potential employer's first impression of you, is whether you are able to follow the correct instructions throughout the application process. So be really certain that you follow all the necessary steps. So for example, do you need to send a cover letter? Do you need to send and upload a copy of your CV? There might be some questions that you need to answer as well as part of the application process. So make sure that you are really clear on all these steps. And if you're unsure, reach out to the hiring manager for that job role to get a little bit more clarity. So things to include in your CV, contact details, a piece of advice about your email address as well. Make sure that your email address is a professional sounding email address, whether you need to change that. Your personal statement is a good opportunity to help you to really stand out, okay? There might be a number of applicants for this job role and you want to stand out from the crowd, so make sure this personal statement is your way of selling yourself. If you're applying for a few different jobs at the same time, you might want to think about tailoring that personal statement and that CV to that job role. So it might be that you need to tweak it a little bit, depending on what some of the specifics of the job role are. You might want to just make sure that you make reference to the specific advert within that personal statement. You want it to cover all of your recent achievements, and you want your CV to be a really good way to sell yourself to a potential future employer, but make sure it's not too long. I think the guidance tends to be around 3 sides at most. Think about the font of your CV and the layout. So you want to make sure that it's nice and clear, it's well spaced out, it's easy for someone to read. Include your recent education, make sure it's things that are relevant to the job role that you're applying to when it comes to things like your experience, your previous work experience, and any volunteer work that you've done as well. It's also a good idea to get someone to check the spelling and the grammar for you before submitting. So if you've got someone that you can just send that to before you put that application in, just in case there's anything on there that you've missed. Again, this is your potential future employer's first impression of you, so make sure that your CV is well written, it's clear, and get someone to do a spell and grammar check for you before submission. When preparing for your interview, there's a few logistics that you can think about. First of all, where is the interview taking place? So these days, having an online interview is quite a common thing. but you may also be invited for an in-person interview. If your interview is online, make sure that you have the correct software that you need for that interview to be able to take place. Make sure you have those links available, and when they come through, normally in an email, it might be worth flagging them or pinning them to the top of your inbox so that you can find them easily, because on the morning of your interview you're already feeling nervous. If you can have that link ready for you to access straight away, it's one less thing for you to worry about. Think about where you're going to sit for that online interview. What does your background look like? And still make sure that you look professional. Make sure that your laptop, your phone, your computer that you're using for your online interview has both a microphone and a camera. It's not essential that people can see you, but I think it gives a good impression if they can. And it just gives people a bit of familiarity if they can see you as well. But obviously you need to make sure that you have a microphone. I personally would have both on for an online interview, but as I said, the camera isn't essential. If your interview is in person, you need to plan your travel time. Where is the practice? Is it a long way away? You might be relocating. So in which case you need to really plan in that travel time and make sure that you arrive there early. Again, on the morning of your interview, if you've got a long drive, you don't want to be looking up that morning how long it's going to take you to get there. Plan all of this in advance and it's just one less thing to worry about. And if you arrive there an hour early, it's absolutely fine. It gives you a little bit more prep time, a bit of time to have a walk around beforehand to calm those nerves. Wear something professional. Sometimes people will say what the dress code is for an interview, sometimes they don't. I would always suggest wearing something smart. If you're planning to stay in practice for the rest of the day to shadow the team, you could always pack your nurse uniform in a bag to then put on after your interview. If you're interviewing for an internal position, treat it as if you don't already work there. You might know all the people on the interview panel already, but again, pretend that that's not the case. Still dress professionally and try not to act too casual just because you know these people. Treat it as an interview for somewhere that you've never worked at before. Do your research before your interview. You can find out a lot from a practice from their website. You can find out things like what their values are, what their team size are, whether they're a training practice, do they do their own out of hours, what are their facilities like. So you can find out a lot about the job role and the practice and get a vibe for what the practice is like even before you go there. They might have a social media page, so have a look at that as well. This can be a really helpful source of information as well. Study the job description. So we talked in the last one about the importance of the job description. So make sure that you give this a thorough read because this can help you maybe formulate some interview questions to ask them at the end of the interview. It's a good idea to prepare some answers for potential questions that you might be asked in an interview. So we'll never know what questions we're going to be asked, but we can have a good guess. Interviewers for vet nursing positions like to ask scenario-based questions. So for example, what would you do in this scenario? Tell me a little bit about when you had to communicate with the rest of the team. Tell me a little bit about how you handle stressful situations and use an example. So maybe just jot down and prepare some potential answers that you can give in an interview. During the interview, remember to breathe. It sounds silly, but we get nervous before interviews and that is completely normal. It means that you care about getting that job role. So just remember to take a breath. Have some water available. When people are nervous, sometimes their mouths dry up. Having water available is really helpful. And another tip that I like to use in an interview is when someone asks me a question, I'll just take a quick sip of water and it just buys me a few more seconds to think about what I'm going to respond with. Don't be afraid if you don't quite understand the question or you want the interviewer to just repeat the question. It might be that they've asked two questions in one and you just want clarity. So it's okay to ask them to repeat, and it's okay to write down a few notes. If you want to, take a notebook and pen with you, and maybe just say to them, I'm just going to jot down that question so I can make sure that I answer all of it. That's absolutely fine. I said in the previous slide that common types of questions in vet nurse interviews are scenario-based questions. So you can use a structure such as the STAR method to help you to answer these questions, and we're going to talk about that in the next slide. It's really important to be your authentic self. You want to go in there, be yourself, sell yourself, be professional, but be your authentic self. Smile, keep that eye contact with the interviewers, be aware of the speed in which you're talking and the tone of which you're talking as well. Make sure that you answer your questions in a really succinct and clear way. Sometimes, again, when we're nervous, we tend to rush what we're saying, so just be aware of that and make sure that you're talking nice and clearly. So the STAR method is a way in which you can structure an answer to a scenario-based question. And STAR stands for situation, task, action and result. So the situation is when we set the scene for our answer. Describe the context that you're talking about, describe the situation, so introduce the situation that you're going to talk about. In that situation, what was the task that needed to be done? Moving on to the action, which is actually what you did in that situation. And what was the result? Share the outcome of your actions. And it's just a really good way to structure those scenario-based answers in a clear and succinct way to make sure you're getting all of that detail across. So maybe try it in your next interview and see how you get on. So in summary, it's really important to make sure you are following the correct steps in the application process and make sure you have clarity on what that process is. Reach out for more information if you need to, so whether that's through a recruitment agency or find out who the hiring manager is for that job role. Do your research and preparation, look at the practice website, read the job description, make sure you've got a really clear idea of whether that practice is going to be right for you. If you're interviewing in person, make sure you leave plenty of time so you're not rushing before your interview starts. If you're interviewing online, have those links ready, have the software ready, have your camera and microphone ready on whatever technology it is that you're using. Be yourself. Being nervous is completely normal. It's actually what can get us through an interview, and it's totally normal to feel nerves. It actually means that you care about the job that you're interviewing for. Consider something like the STAR method to help you structure your answers for those scenario-based questions. And have some questions to ask at the end of the interview. So the interviewers will normally ask if you have any questions. So this is another thing to maybe just have prepared, a couple of questions that you can ask them at the end of the interview. So this concludes the second bite-sized webinar in the series about looking for your next role. Don't forget to like this video if you found it useful. Please do feel free to ask questions in the comments and subscribe to the Langford Academy for more content on this series.